All right, let's get started. GM, 𝗵. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and appreciate everyone here today that joined us. Matan from eoracle. We have Zahary from Blocksense. We have Marcin from Redstone. Thank you guys for joining to talk oracles.
Thank you for having us.
Rock and roll.
Rock and roll. Let's get into it. Cool, guys. Well, this stream comes as part of our EigenLayer Unlocked series. If you guys been tuning in, we've been taking a really deep dive into the EigenLayer ecosystem. Now, not everyone here on this panel is using EigenLayer, but that's okay. I think, Zahary, you guys at Blocksense, Matan, you guys as well at eoracle are using EigenLayer. And so I kind of want to get into, what some of the advantages to using EigenLayer are. And generally, I think, we've seen the today is kind of the evolution of the oracle space, and then also kind of how EigenLayer coming into the mix is going to further change the oracle space. So, Marcin, I think I'd like to kick it over to you to start with kind of this history of the oracle space as you see it, and then we'll kind of introduce EigenLayer, and we'll hear from Matan and Zahary about how EigenLayer kind of changes this oracle landscape a bit. Marcin?
Thank you. Yeah, so hey everyone, thanks for having me. Rob, in the middle of the question you cut off, so I will try to answer it as well as I can.
Yeah, but I can quickly reiterate, basically, we've seen the oracle space change a lot and evolve a lot over recent years, and so I was hoping that you could kind of give us a pretext to what has been the history of the oracle space, how has it evolved significantly over the years, and then we'll bring EigenLayer into the fold, and Matan and Zahary can talk about how EigenLayer changes that.
Okay, very helpful. Marcin here, co-founder at Redstone Oracles, one of the quickest growing oracle on the market, focusing a lot on DeFi and the builders, essentially. On the oracle history, so I joined the crypto scene in 2017, initially writing my bachelor thesis about blockchain, how they operate, what are the monetary systems. Today we call them tokenomics, because I graduated quantitative methods in economics back then. And oracles have always been a very essential part for any application built on top of blockchain, because they help to help the smart contracts to execute given the conditions that are outside of the blockchain on which it's deployed. So if the condition for a smart contract is a transaction from wallet A to wallet B on that specific blockchain, then it can do it without an oracle, because it's inherently sitting on that blockchain. But even if the transaction happens on another blockchain, there should be an oracle or a system that delivers that information to the smart contract on that given blockchain, because they are closed systems. And initially in 2017, 2018, people tried to create oracles by their own. So you create a system, a DeFi app or whatever, on top of Ethereum or other chain, and then you need to add some outside logic to make a contract execute. So you create an adapter, let's call it. What can go wrong? So your system grows, and then it turns out the adapter you created is pretty easy to attack and prone to either manipulation or just going down, and then protocols got hacked, or they're just going bust altogether. So then Chainlink and some other solutions came into play 2018, 2019, 2020. Chainlink being the one that dominated the space, and actually here 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 to the Chainlink crew to create also the category, right? Because for many years, they were the ones that were leading. It's not so easy to lead in a specific sector, especially if it's a new one, and help to create DeFi summer as we remember it, 2020. How it looks right now, we can talk about that with the two other big brains over here on the podcast. EigenLayer plays a big role over there, but from my standpoint, my point of view, it's still a lot about DeFi, so supporting the applications about the financial system on chain, and essentially serving the builders, because you can talk about fluffy and nice things about oracles that they deliver all kinds of data and every kind of ecosystem. But at the end of the day, who is using the oracle are the developers creating other solutions. So yeah, those would be my 2 cents.
Yep, epic. I think that frames oracles very well. Essentially, it's always been about this task of bringing data from one blockchain, or excuse me, from really anywhere outside of that blockchain into that blockchain, whether that outside data comes from another blockchain or it comes from, some place in the physical world. Trying to get that data onto the blockchain has been a task. And so now EigenLayer comes around, and we have this mechanism to sort of share security, rent economic security from one another. And so, Matan, maybe we'll pass it over to you, and kind of, you can start with explaining how EigenLayer and the idea of restaking economic security, how bringing that to the Oracle space is kind of a 0 to 1. And then we'll get into the specific Oracle designs in a little bit, but let's start with general. How does EigenLayer what does it bring to the Oracle space?
All right. So you guys have been doing a lot of great work with content recently on how EigenLayer works. So let me be relatively quick with how I go back to the basics. But the vast majority of people think about EigenLayer restaking shared security as the economic security. There are many billions of security that currently construct the Ethereum proof of work, the stake that is basically backing this system. And I can open up the ability to reuse this stake. But the stake by itself is just one part of it. And different systems like oracles, and I think bridges as well, and systems that really have an economic value for manipulating them, require two things: this crypto economic security, but also the crypto economic security is not standing by itself, because you also need a distributed set of validators that will be able to handle this security. And here you come into a very unique situation, because if you think about Ethereum and you think about the value that you are getting from shared security, especially when you harness that from Ethereum, that you also have the only validator set that actually achieve escape velocity. There is no other network that we know of that really have this globally distributed set of validators that are not correlated with one another. Of course, we all know that there are big groups that are correlated with one another and know each other, but there's also a very big group of ones that are not. And this is a big part of why Ethereum is so resilient and secure. And this thing is very important when you think about oracles. Because if you think about that, even if you have $10 billion or $100 billion behind an oracle, but it's all been delegated to just these 5 operators that are doing the work. And if these 5 operators can come together and very easily decide on something that is going against the system, going against the users of the system, they can easily do that even with all of this economic security, and they will not be punished. And this is something that we are usually not really talking about. We're mainly talking about the economic side, but this is as crucial when you go and you think about oracles and the way that oracles reach consensus. So I can stop here and maybe allow Zahary to continue and say a few words about
Yeah, please, Zahary, because I think Matan, you spoke to the resiliency and the censorship-resistant nature of the Ethereum validator set, and I think we're big fans of that. Over at the Rollup, in terms of both reusing that for EigenLayer and the security nature of that validator set, and then also on Ethereum the based thesis and using that validator set to sequence transactions. I think there's lots of untapped value when it comes to how much value we can squeeze out of that Ethereum validator set. Now, Zahary, maybe specifically with respect to oracles, we can talk a little bit more about using that validator set, fill in any gaps here that we've missed, Zahary.
I think the game-changing quality that EigenLayer brings to the table is that now it's possible to bootstrap actual and decentralized Oracle protocols. Because my own background is I used to lead the Nimbus Ethereum client for over 6 years, and I was watching the evolution of the protocol closely. But the Oracle problem remained one of the unsolved issues in the network. Like, this industry is still dominated by very centralized models, And we need something where there will be actual crypto economic security, more control for the community. Basically, the centralized Oracle network should allow anybody to create new data feeds. Like the programming model of Ethereum itself should be offered to the connection to the real world. People should be able to introduce new data feeds. They should be able to program them. And that's what we're trying to build with Blocksense. And if we were starting 2 years ago, it would be a challenge because it's difficult to bootstrap a decentralized protocol. But nowadays with EigenLayer, you can increase your crypto economic security very quickly and then work from there to improve further the design of your protocol.
Awesome. Okay, so maybe we can get into some of the nuances here. Like, why is it important that EigenLayer is used in order to preserve the decentralization of these oracles? And I think you kind of hinted at Marcin did a great job of kind of highlighting Chainlink as like one of the early pioneers, but granted, they were around back in 2017 to quite a few years ago when EigenLayer wasn't around. Some of this infrastructure wasn't around. So, kind of open to Matan and Zahary, both of you guys as oracles that are using EigenLayer. What is it specifically about the Ethereum validator set and EigenLayer that helps to empower the oracles, making it more decentralized in Blocksense's case, and then more resilient, et cetera? Matan, as you mentioned, to the security element.
Happy to start here, and Zahary, feel free to chime in when you feel like. So we are touching here the differences between traditional oracles and oracles that are basically drawing their security from the base layer, and in that way extending the base layer to do more than what can be done today. So I can say that we are seeing today even chains, even L2s, trying to do just that. So as an example, 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 planning on having part of their sequencers or part of their one sequencer to be able to connect to different APIs. So this is very similar to what Zahary mentioned that they are trying to do. And I think we're going to see more and more of that where you have APIs that we are using and Zahary using and Redstone using. If the chain itself is able to say, okay, I can establish this connection because I know that many of the developers will want data, and that's going to be raw data from this API. Of course, there are questions of how do you validate this data and how do you make sure if the other side is not willing to sign that. But this is something that I think we're going to see. Everyone agree that this is a need for blockchains and for applications, and I think we're going to see more of that happening either through EigenLayer, and like we are shifting away from the traditional Oracle model that just doing that to some kind of extension of the base layer, or just do it through layer 2s that are actually facilitating this service themselves. Now, APIs and just calling to an API, it's one thing. Oracles today need to be able to do much more than that. And this is a debate that I'm happy to open here. I think that Marcin probably would have a different opinion than the opinion that we have, that the blockchain space is growing, and just doing traditional oracles in a more secure way will not be enough for the years to come.
And Matan, just to double click really quickly, the model that you mentioned is like the traditional model, and maybe we're heading towards this next generation model. But this traditional model is what exactly? It's an extension of the base layer in terms of the oracles.
So the traditional model is oracles that are being built with their own validator set, with no stake, with trust in the brand. So if you think about Chainlink, they have stake for one USD ETH USDC, and beside that there is no stake that back in any of the other pairs. There is a small set of validators that are very correlated with Chainlink. You have no way of signing up a new validator. If you want that, there's no permissionless validator set. So that's the traditional Oracle model. But with that being said, even if Chainlink will go now and say, okay, we also want to get some ETH, some restaked ETH, and just put it behind this validator set, it won't really be a major improvement because you still have this issue with this validator set that is not permissioned and not open. And even with that being said, it's still doing one main thing, which is connecting you to price feed APIs and providing this price feed APIs on chain. With that being said, this is a big, the first product market fit that we had in the blockchain space, and we are seeing a lot of adoption to that, and I think we will continue to see. But we are also excited. I think this is something that everyone in the space can agree on, that we are excited about seeing new types of applications. Everyone wants to see that, and I think we are in the beginning of that. Like today was election day, and the entire world is talking about Polymarket. Like literally, I saw a tweet that the Trump campaign they knew about some winning of some states because of Polymarket, because this is like the market is the fastest to react. So this type of data is very different than the data the Chainlink would provide you, but 𝗏 provides this data. This is a different type of consensus and a different type of dispute resolution that really point to where oracles are going from here. Oracles are going and becoming more and more specialized as the blockchain space is growing. Now, if the blockchain space will not grow and we're just going to have what we have right now, everything I'm saying is out the window and it's really not relevant. But if we are growing, we're going to see this more and more specialization, and that will happen in terms of how this validator set is coming to consensus and how you're able to verify their work and have this backing, which I will stop and I just will say 2 words on the backing, and I will allow you guys to chime in and say what you think about that. But we here at the Oracle basically break the backing into 2 groups. There is a budget of security and there is a cost of security. And the 2 act very differently. One of them is slashable and punishable, and the other one is much higher in terms of the amount of capital, and it's mainly being used to deter any kind of malicious attacker from even trying to gain a lot of influence over the system. So the fact that you have $10 billion of stake it means that someone needs to come in and have multiple billions of dollars in order to really affect the system. That's a high cost of an attack for him. Even if it's not going to be punishable, he needs to come in with a lot of cash in order to do that. While they're going to be a smaller set of capital, which will be punishable, but will not be in the underlying it, and hence will have a higher cost per unit of capital.
My take on the kind of traditional Oracle industry, I have a slightly different way to define what it is. Basically, the current Oracle industry is such that kind of people, when they heard about the oracles, they think about price feeds, VRFs, maybe bridges. But basically, the thing is that it's a set of products kind of defined by few companies. And these products are out there. Kind of you can think about how to make use of them, but you cannot really innovate outside of what is being offered to you. And that's what we are trying to change. We believe that the next wave of innovation will actually come from the application developers. They will come up with these new product categories, and they will define what an oracle is in the future. Should be a much broader term, basically. The original meaning is an oracle is something that connects the blockchain with information outside of the blockchain. And that's a kind of very rich universe of data. But to get there, basically, because you said how EigenLayer can help, EigenLayer helps a lot, but it also introduces some new challenges, because now with EigenLayer, we are inviting anybody potentially to join the as reporter of data. So this opens the door for potentially malicious users, users who are trying to kind of sabotage or disrupt the connectivity of these protocols. And so we, as designers of these systems, we have to be extra paranoid how we deal with this potentially malicious signal. So we have taken a kind of defense in-depth approach. We are relying on the crypto economic security coming from EigenLayer, but we have a number of additional systems in place with kind of secret voting and secret committee elections that make it very difficult for an attacker to ever even reach the security mechanisms of EigenLayer, with, say, for example, the forking token.
Got it. Okay, so throughout all of this, what I'm hearing is that the integrity of the data is paramount, and I think in a perfect world we could get the most flexible. Anyone can attest anything. Any kind of data is possible to bring on chain, no matter how robust or, how esoteric that data is, but it's important that we have some sort of consensus as to what data is the correct data. And so I think that's where we kind of implement this security budget. Maybe it comes from L1, maybe it comes from EigenLayer. But it's important that we have a allocation of either cryptographic or economic security allocated to protecting the integrity of the data through these Oracle systems. Marcin, maybe you could take the non-restaked economic security side here and just talk a little bit about how Redstone works and how you guys derive security in the system, maintain the integrity of data through Redstone.
Yeah, sure. And very interesting takes from the previous speakers. I also learned stuff. Today we have a very interesting day also with the elections, right? So thanks, Matan, for bringing the poly market resolution topic, which is also a big win for Polygon, by the way, that people forgot about in the craze of L2s, but now it halted the door, let's call it. Redstone. So right now we have the two most popular models on the Oracle space, which is the push model, push Oracle, that Chainlink popularized, and the pull model that has been popularized by Redstone and 𝗶 mainly, back in 2022 and 23. Naturally, there will be new models, but let's say those are the two that people, when you tell them, they usually know what's going on, at least from the principle, when you talk about the data. In the push model, you take data and you deliver it to the smart contract on-chain storage in intervals. So you always accept that the truth on-chain is different than the one from off-chain source because there is a delay. It can be a second, it can be a fraction of a second if it's cheap, but sometimes even 24 hours, and it can deviate pretty hard. In the pool model, you keep data off-chain as long as possible in any sort of off-chain component. In our case, it's data distribution layer, where we update feeds very frequently, and the protocol fetches that only when there is a user interaction that needs that. We call it on-demand data. So in example, Gearbox right now is using Redstone in that model. So when you sign a transaction on Gearbox frontend, then to your transaction called data, a signed data package is attached, and you are the delivery man of that information on chain. And right now, with both of those models, we have over 100 clients, such as Venus, Morpho, Pendle, Sommelier, Enzyme, many others. And in this conversation of with EigenLayer and without, before EigenLayer was properly functioning, we had the very pragmatic approach of, hey, let's ask what the user wants, what problem he's trying to solve, and let's deliver it as fast and as reliably as it is possible. That's the reason right now with Redstone, we have 75%, right now 70% of our staff engineers. We focus a lot on delivering quickly the engineering work that we are asked by the market. But as we are going to grow the space of use cases beyond DeFi, or maybe with new use cases of DeFi that will require different types of data, we're also happy to support the builders out there. It's rather in the past, for example, Zahary mentioned, we did have a module that was called custom oracles. It allowed any person without any permission to create their own oracle. The issue that we faced was people were spamming a lot of random use cases. That was small issue. The bigger issue was when people created an oracle and started to bring it to production, they usually burned their fingers, right? And many of the use cases were very interesting. So for example, fetching the data from London, register about people who died that day to create some sort of insurance protocol for the London ecosystem whatsoever. So there were very interesting use cases. And in long term, I'm very in favor of them. The issue that we usually were facing was willingness and ability to pay from the creator, because those are usually novel use cases. So people don't have a business case over there. And what we do care about Redstone, and this is one thing I want people to remember about Redstone, is we do care about long-term sustainability of our model of the business, because in order to make Oracle viable, as Matan mentioned, there is the side that is protecting the amount of stake that you create in the system, but also there has to be a side that is feeding that amount of stake protected. So a revenue generating side, so answering people need and creating products that they are willing to constantly subscribe to and sustain the system in general?
I agree that it's very important to address kind of the existing use cases. Like we have the industry thriving right now, and it's clear for everybody that there's few specific use cases that needs to be supported. And Blocksense, we've applied some hardcore engineering to actually lower the cost for addressing all the existing use cases. When we publish data on chain, we, instead of publishing individual updates as individual transactions, we are able to publish blocks containing thousands of updates at once and being verified with a single zero-knowledge proof. We are supporting the pool model, but we are bringing a very new alternative to the table. Basically, in Blocksense, since you're programming how the oracle should behave, we actually support something similar to a conditional logic that determines when exactly the update should reach the chain. So a lot of these use cases that are currently addressed with the pool model can be expressed with these conditional scripts in our system, where, for example, monitoring the value of a collateral in a lending protocol, and only when it reaches a certain threshold, you are offering the ability to the liquidators into protocol to basically inject their transactions in our blocks of updates. And this happens exactly when it's necessary, and the cost for them is much lower because they don't have to pay the gas fees. Our sequencer carries their transaction on chain, and actually there is a bidding mechanisms here that asks these liquidators to basically bid for the right for exactly their transactions to be included. And we can capture the value, the value that are gaining from this liquidation within the protocol and offer it back to the lending protocol so it can be distributed to the end users, thus eliminating a major source of inefficiency for the end users and making these lending protocols more attractive.
I would love to chime in here. We are here developers. We try to we are talking a lot about the architecture and the design decisions, but in DeFi, a lot of times there are other weights for decisions and for changes. And Marcin has been in this space for quite a long time. He knows that so many times the decision makers of making changes to of what they are using for the protocols are not really making those decisions based on what is the best design and what can really have these light improvements on the experience of the users or the searchers. I can share with you that what you said right now, about the MEV side and the liquidation, it's something that both API 3 and 𝗵 are doing a lot of work around, and you can see that much of the adoption or not adoption is actually happening because so much of the liquidation profit is actually flowing into certain people that have influence over these protocols, and they wouldn't like these changes to take place. And this is something that was interesting to me to learn as you get into this industry. And Zahary, you're coming from working on clients, you're coming from really deep design and engineering problems, and you are learning that so much of the decisions are actually happening on which oracle these protocols will use are not being based on what is the most secure, what is the most, what will provide to my users the most valuable solution to this protocol and maintain the integrity of the protocol, but what actually is a viable business decision. And I think that rather than being some sort of judgmental on that, we have to really understand that at the end of the day, many of these protocols are businesses. And this is something that really help us in better understanding, all right, if I'm looking at this conversation right now, and you have Redstone on one side that prove a lot of product market fit by really listening to the users and being so quick in iterating and providing solutions. I've heard it from a lot of protocols that were saying that Redstone is the quickest to really provide them with new assets and help them as they grow and as they need new things. And you have a team that really specialized in doing that at scale. And then you have on the other side, Zahary, what you're explaining here, something that is very cost-tuned. You are able to build anything you want, and you're able to access any type of off-chain data. And you're even able to access how this data will be propagated on-chain. That require a lot of specialty, right, from the users to really have a deep understanding of their design decisions and how they should interact with that. We have an approach that is somewhere in the middle. We think that as the blockchain space evolve, we're going to no one oracle will be able to really cater to all of these specialties. Like no price feed oracle will be able to provide the best solution for prediction markets. And we think we're going to see more and more specialties like that. And this is why we've built the oracle in a way that allow OVSs to be built on top of it. And today we have a host of teams building unique use cases, unique oracles, Oracle validated service that harness the security and the validator set that exist, mainly because we believe that this is some kind of a trade-off between asking the users to be professional in creating oracles, which, as Martin said, they're really burning their fingers and they don't have the appetite for that also. Like every time you're talking to them about help me get you the right solution, they are actually stepping back and saying, no, you need to be the professional because this is really critical infrastructure, is the way I'm seeing it. But on the other hand, we understand that no one team should either have the complete kind of chain-link environment when you kind of try to control this all and do it all yourself. And the real secret is how do you empower specialized builders to be able to provide these specialized solutions as we go on? Because as you said in the beginning of this conversation, the bootstrapping is the main problem that we're solved with the emergence of shared security.
I completely agree. Like we are bringing something very novel to the table, so we need to kind of provide the best possible support for kind of the users of this technology. So it's completely fair to expect that in the initial years, kind of we will be helping them build these Oracle scripts. But because this is going to play out in the open, like all of this will be open source. Kind of when you launch a new protocol relying on an Oracle script, kind of the Oracle script becomes something like an extension to your smart contracts. Your security auditors should take a look at it. They should provide critique and so on and so forth. So best practices will emerge over time. And at some point in the future, people will be confident enough to kind of tackle these problems by themselves. But surely, kind of in the beginning, we're there to help.
You know, Andy from the Rollup wrote something a couple of weeks ago that really resonated with me, that whoever going to win the next bull market is not the best solution, but actually the ones that have the best distribution. And you are describing something here that the distribution of that, of really educating them on how they can do it and how it can be built for them, it's something that we started from that point. And we kind of learned along the way that this is very hard because they are not really interested. They want it to come like pretty much out of the box, ready for them. So it's going to be interesting. I'm excited to see how that will evolve.
Well, my experience is slightly different. I see a lot of excitement about what we're building, and people are very happy that kind of they can work around some of the inflexibility of the traditional Oracle providers. For example, in the traditional Oracle providers, if you want to track the price of a kind of emerging asset and it's listed only on few dexes without a lot of liquidity, you had a hard time finding somebody to accept introducing an Oracle like this. Wow, in this system where you can kind of program your own safeguards and can define exactly what your requirements are, and you can always find a solution for the problems at hand.
That's very interesting. That's very new to me. I wonder what Marcin think about that from his experience.
I have some advices, but I want to see. Okay, I will flip the question. How do you price that? I'm genuinely interested, like how the pricing model over there works.
Well, the pricing model eventually, in the long term, we are trying to build the most efficient marketplace possible that meets the consumers and the producers of the data on two sides. But that's definitely kind of a challenging problem, and it's kind of further down the road. Like because we want to bring this capability to market as soon as possible, and we've actually adopted a model that is close enough to what you guys are doing. Like initially, we have a very permission set of operators, which a bunch of very reputable companies such as Blockdaemon, Bluenodes, etc., which would be the kind of the companies staking their reputation to kind of give everybody assurance that this system would function properly. And just like you guys, we will be kind of negotiating on a case-by-case basis the business deals for any protocol that wants to introduce something very custom within this model. But basically, the pricing would be close to the actual cost of delivering the services. Actual factor that required infrastructure, the Zahary and DevOps work, and so on and so forth, to arrive at something that's sustainable.
Yeah, Zahary, I think that's an interesting point there, because what I wanted to bring up next is this idea of vendor lock-in, which we've seen in kind of the Oracle space before, and I think we're seeing a bit in the interoperability space. And so, as a result of some vendor lock-in, if you can't really change, your provider, then your vendor can charge, some price that is maybe exorbitant and excessive beyond just the cost that it takes to operate and provide that data. And so I'm curious how you guys are seeing this. I think it's worthwhile to call it a problem. I think, we're looking for an industry that prioritizes the best technology, regardless of, maybe a BD department, and, trying to improve these services to the extent that we can maximize capital efficiency and kind of like run these solutions at the cost as much as we can. And so, and then ultimately value accrual, back to end users. Everyone's kind of better off because we have, better technology, lower fees, et cetera, more efficiency. And so how are you guys thinking about, this vendor lock-in problem as it relates to the Oracle space, and then ultimately providing a solution that isn't just like technologically superior, that, we've talked a lot about kind of providing the most secure and the most resilient solution, but also one that is palatable to these applications that are currently maybe locked into a different vendor. And how can we unlock that so that we ultimately are able to implement the best technology solution into the most amount of apps? That's just open-ended to anyone, not really directed to a particular person here. Don't all jump in at once. I hope the question makes sense.
I think the question makes sense. Ultimately, we consider ourselves a software vendor. Like, we are building a protocol that is permissionless in every aspect. So the sequencers will be coming from the community in the future. The people introducing new oracles would be the developers. The reporters of the data would be, again, people from the community. So, but obviously, we ask everybody to believe in this long-term vision, and kind of the way to convince them perhaps is that when we structure these initial deals, we always kind of have a large component being defined, being paid in the Blocksense token itself. So pretty much everybody who jumps on board has to believe that the value of the Blocksense token will be there in the future when it powers this kind of fully decentralized protocol that I am describing.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, one thing that is pretty important from the Oracle perspective, as you said, the vendor lock-in, I will turn the table and changing stuff as you're already protecting a lot of value on chain. Oracle is this thing that is very hard to adjust once it gets an adoption. And then changing gears is a challenge because you're protecting billions of dollars, in our case at least. And then we get some custom requests to change something. You have to be very careful about any of that, because also bad actors are watching, and you can see it all over the place. Recently, Radiant, one of the Lightning protocols, didn't do anything bad in terms of security from smart contract perspective. No ZK proofs or anything else. No new technology was needed to make the attack possible. It was a social engineering attack. So if you're moving stuff and there are multi-sigs involved, there are many aspects that can be prone to being attacked, right? From the perspective of long-term sustainability, oracles are also pretty complicated systems. In contrast to layer ones, where you have a very narrow set of tasks that you define over there, even bridges are way easier in terms of logic, because bridges usually bridge assets between like different chains. So asset is an asset, right? So it can be different type of asset, it can have different conditions, but it's an asset. In terms of data, you have the versatility is way broader, right? So the moment you start protecting and creating an oracle at large, it's pretty hard to move those. So I'm very keen, honestly, like genuinely, I'm very keen to look how Zahary and Matan also will be expanding their solutions if they figure out how to make it that it's economically viable. The moment you grow, it still makes sense and you don't have to change gears. And people understand the fee model and how you basically create that. Like our go-to-market so far, and I'm not telling it's a silver bullet, I'm telling it works for us, is listen to the builders, take the job that they don't want to do on our shoulders, take the stress. Like our team is always stressed about, any potential attack. It's Oracle business, we accept that. And then keep innovating to the extent that is truly needed on the market. So if there's like a new protocol that, for example, Bitcoin staking oracles, we've worked, I think, 4 months to create the very first Bitcoin staking oracle on the market with Lombard, because right now Babylon is still like a moving vehicle. So we built a price feed on top of something that is changing itself. If you're creating a price feed for wrap staked ETH from Lido, it's easy because it's been like this for months now, right? Like since 𝗨𝗶𝗴𝗵 update. But Babylon is a moving system. You have Lombard as a moving system on top, and you create an oracle on top. So there are so many pieces that you have to make sure that are working together. And we have like the whole engineering and security team to work on that, right? Yeah. So Matan, maybe you also have some 2 cents.
I think you're truly saying some great points here, Martin. And builders and Zahary, as I think, this is definitely what I feel. As I'm talking to more and more builders, they see oracles as critical infrastructure that they kind of feel like they don't want to get their hands into. And unfortunately, now we are seeing situations where, like what happened with 𝗵𝗶𝗴𝗵 a couple of weeks ago, where someone decided not to use an oracle and they set up themselves the feed for gold, and it was attacked, and not because of some kind of an oracle problem, but because they set it in a way that wasn't right and they didn't use any oracle provider. And now, like, there's a discussion: is it 𝗵𝗶's fault, and this should be attributed to like a 𝗵𝗶 hack in a way, which harming the 𝗵𝗶 brand, which then lead to the opposite of your approach, which I really agree with on my personal level, that it should be looked as a software rather than as more something that it's a specialty, that you need a middleman that would help you to really work on this specialty. But this is a very delicate business, and most builders don't really want to deal with that. They want to focus on how they are increasing their TVL. They want to focus on how they are getting more users. They want to focus on the listing. They want to focus on their next round. They want to focus on how they are growing, rather than focusing on how can I get this data in a way that really don't have a middleman in the center. Like, so many of them are using like Chainlink today, and they're not questioning even like how this thing is being built. And they can use another oracle provider without really questioning how it's being built if they have this social proof. Which, I think that the same is also true in a way for blockchains. There are so many different blockchains out there that up until today don't have slashing conditions and don't really have real cryptoeconomic security, and they have a very small set of validators. But users mainly trust them, and they say, all right, this thing is working for the past X years. It's going to continue to work. I don't need to think about that. Let me think about the specific thing I'm coming here to do. So this is like my experience when looking at that. But then you want to balance that, and you want to say, okay, just the fact because of things have been like that up until today doesn't mean that they will always be like that. The tools that we have today are continue to improve. like ZK was not really a possible viable thing up until recently, and it's becoming more and more thing that is entrenched in the set of tools that we have as builders in the space. So to answer this question, I think the answers for the next couple of years is to find this balance. To find this balance as providing this specialty, but without really burdening the users and asking them, or the builders in our case, and asking them, come and develop and take on yourself this responsibility. And I think that the solution for that is really dedicated teams that are super passionate about what they do. They are super passionate about prediction market oracle. They are super passionate about security oracle or risk management. Like a lot of what Marcin said about how this Bitcoin Fi ecosystem is growing, and also the LRT space is growing, is how do you value these new assets that have very low liquidity on secondary market, but all of the lending market wants them. How do you value these assets? And I think there is a lot of risk management here that as we grow will separate on its own and probably would have its own oracle for unique and esoteric assets.
I agree with all these points. First, listening to the markets, kind of finding the balance between specialists, or kind of splitting the responsibilities in the right way, and then about the security concerns as well. And I'll start with the last point. I would actually argue that our system is making the Oracle space much more auditable, because we are now revealing how Oracle works under the hood. You can kind of peek into the actual source code that brings the data on chain. Wow, this is obscure in traditional systems. Listening to the markets, definitely. And kind of when I say, talk about these ideas, how people will be using our platform to build custom oracles, okay, that's the dream, obviously. But right now what's happening is that we are the first users of our own platform. We are dogfooding it, improving it along the way, and building products through this platform. And our first product is actually, I would say, exactly what the users want. Like if you launch a new chain today, you probably want all the DeFi infrastructure to be deployable to your chain. And whether you like it or not, usually this means that you have to have oracles that are compatible with the Chainlink interfaces, the PIT interfaces, Redstone interfaces, and so on and so forth. So what we have built is a rich set of adapters that can allow all the popular DeFi protocols to be deployed together with Blocksense without any modifications. And even though these adapters are in place, so the architecture of our system, it's bringing so much additional efficiency that the overall cost for getting data on chain is still kind of 20 to 50 times lower. And the access of kind of the on-chain access costs, which are very minuscule, but even there, kind of we made a lot of tricks with inline assembly to kind of squeeze out every last bit of gas optimization.
Awesome. Guys, I think we're at time, but this has been fascinating. And, I appreciate you guys all coming together, because everyone here is, very much in the same domain. And so I think that's where, we can bring knowledgeable people together, and we can talk about these things. And ultimately, everyone is better off with this, like, more improved, just sharing information, cross-pollinating ideas. Everyone's better off with a more collective understanding. So appreciate you guys coming on. Thank you so much. Also, like, we've seen so many different projects come out and try to do more infrastructure, but not a lot of more oracles. And so, I appreciate you guys innovating in a space that I think needs a lot of innovation, but maybe doesn't get a lot of it's easy to go launch another L2, but no one wants another L2. Like, you guys keep doing what you're doing, make the systems as they are here better, and keep up the good work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Now we should add, okay, all of us are launching an L2.
Yeah. We should add that all of these L2s that's growing really grow in the Oracle market, because all of them needs Oracle at the end of the day. Yeah.
There you go.
Awesome. Thank you for having us, Rob, Zahary, Marcin. Thank you, guys.
Great conversation, guys.
Pleasure.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Yes.